For more than 3,000 years, ancient Egyptian embalmers carefully preserved the human body for eternity. They saved the heart, they protected the liver, lungs, and intestines, but the brain, they destroyed it and threw it away. This was not a mistake. It was deliberate, ritual, and deeply rooted in how the ancient Egyptians understood the human soul. To understand why the brain was removed, we must understand how ancient Egyptians defined life itself. Ancient Egyptian civilization began around 3100 BCE, with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under King Narmer. From the very beginning, death was not an ending. It was a transition. The Egyptians believed the human being was made of several spiritual parts. These ideas are recorded in funerary texts, such as the Pyramid Texts, Old Kingdom, c. 2400 BCE, later the Coffin Texts, and finally, the Book of the Dead. Among these spiritual components, one organ mattered more than any other. The heart, called the IB. The heart was believed to be the center of thought, memory, emotion, and morality. This belief is documented in medical and religious texts, including the Edwin Smith Papyrus c. 1600 BCE, based on earlier material, and the Ebers Papyrus. In these texts, the heart is described as the command center of the body. It controlled speech, decision-making, and consciousness. The brain, however, is barely mentioned. Ancient Egyptian medicine recognized the brain as a physical object. The Edwin Smith Papyrus describes brain injuries and even mentions cerebrospinal fluid, but nowhere does it assign the brain a spiritual or intellectual role. To the Egyptians, the brain was passive tissue, not the seat of the mind. This belief directly shaped the mummification process. The earliest intentional mummification dates to around 2600 BCE, during the Old Kingdom. By the New Kingdom c. 1552, 1070 BCE, embalming had become highly standardized. The process is described by Herodotus, the Greek historian, writing in the 5th century BCE in Histories. Book 2. According to Herodotus, embalmers first removed the brain. They did this through the nose. Using a long metal hook, they broke through the thin bone behind the nasal cavity. The brain was liquefied and extracted in pieces. Any remaining tissue was flushed out using resin or oils. This method is confirmed by modern CT scans of mummies, including royal mummies such as Ramesses II and Thutmose III. Once removed, the brain was discarded. It was not preserved. It was not placed in a canopic jar. It had no afterlife function. The organs that were preserved tell us everything. The liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were removed, dried with natron, and placed in canopic jars, each protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus. Imsidi protected the liver, Hapi protected the lungs, Tuamutef protected the stomach, Kabisanuf protected the intestines, but there is no son of Horus for the brain. The heart was treated differently. In most cases, the heart was left inside the chest. Why? Because the heart was essential for judgment in the afterlife. According to chapter 125 of the Book of the Dead, the deceased would stand before Osiris, god of the underworld. There, the heart would be weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and cosmic order. If the heart was heavier than the feather, burdened by sin, it would be devoured by Ammit. The soul would cease to exist. Without a heart, judgment was impossible. Without a brain, nothing was lost. This explains why some mummies even included a heart scarab, inscribed with spells asking the heart not to testify against its owner. There are no spells asking the brain to remain silent. Even Egyptian language reflects this belief. Words for thinking, feeling, and intention are all linked to the heart. There is no equivalent philosophical vocabulary tied to the brain. This worldview lasted for millennia. Even during the Ptolemaic period, 332 to 30 BCE, after Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, traditional embalming practices continued. Greek physicians like Hippocrates and later Galen argued that the brain controlled thought, but Egyptian religious tradition did not change. Faith outweighed anatomy. Ironically, modern science would eventually prove the opposite. Today we know that memory, emotion, decision-making, and identity are all functions of the brain. But the Egyptians were not ignorant. They were consistent. Their system worked within their understanding of the universe. They preserved what they believed carried the soul. They removed what they believed did not. Here is the twist. The ancient Egyptians were masters of preservation. Their mummies still exist after 3,000 years. But the one organ we now believe defines who we are. They erased it completely. The heart, once thought to be the mind, was saved for eternity. The brain, the true seat of consciousness, was destroyed without ceremony. History reminds us of something powerful. Even the most advanced civilizations can misunderstand what matters most. And sometimes, what we throw away tells us more than what we preserve.